Climbing as we know it is at risk of dying in the U.S. I'm sorry to say, but the risks are legislation such starting to mount up a bit. Mainly because it used to be this counterculture that hippies, adventurers, and rednecks partook in for whatever reason. But recently, between the Olympics and COVID, people have been driven outside. And so now they find themselves partaking in this weird sport. And because there are more people partaking, there's now a proposal from the NPS National Park Service that could kill the larger, more burgeoning climbing community. The proposal would essentially ban bolting and make rebolting things proceed on an application-based process in wilderness areas such as RMP, Rocky Mountain National Park, J-Tree, Joshua Tree, and the Wind Rivers, which this law, to me at least, especially being interested in law and having a bit of a legal background, is pretty interesting to me because first off, one of the things that legislators do consider when they make a new law is the enforceability of it. Because if they can't enforce a law, it's kind of pointless to make it. And I call that into question with this law. How would this ever be enforced? Would the NPS have to hire people who are pretty decent climbers to go do alpine routes and chop the bolts high up on them, such as on Ellingwood Ledges? There's an anchor somewhere up there, and I don't think Ellingwood Ledges would be impacted by this. I could be wrong, but I think the Creststones are technically a wilderness area, so maybe. But you gotta walk in. Let's just break this down. You gotta walk in 10-ish miles with a lot of gear. You probably camp overnight. You start the route at 4 a.m. and then there's a few bolts on the first pitch, so they chop those so the follower chops those on the way up. And then there's a couple more pitches of pure trad. Then there's a couple mountain pitches with high class 4, low class 5, and quite a bit of class 3. And then there are two or three more pitches up top. And one of those pitches has some old pitons and an old anchor up top because there's no spot for a trad anchor. Would you chop that? And would you do it in that way? Or would you go top down and chop it that way? Again, and that's still a journey because you still got to hike in 10, 15 miles and then summit a 14,000 foot peak and then rappel down. And that's a multi-day affair. And that seems to be so much more trouble than it's worth. And what about when inevitably some climbers at some unholy hour in the night hike out there with a big drill and whatnot and rebolt the whole thing just because you chopped a bunch of them? I really can't see how this would be enforceable. They'd have to have people constantly on retinue to be able to go back and re-chop these bolts. Would they pay climbers bounties for collecting bolts like they tried with pythons in India? I don't see that working either. But then if they just let it slide, like, Creststone Needle, it's pretty remote. No one really goes on that side of things anyway. You can't even see the bolts from any of the campsites at all because they're so high up. And then they're going to let more and more stuff slide, and pretty soon the law becomes unapplicable, but you just went in a big circle where you spent a bunch of time and money trying to chop stuff, and all it did was delay climbing and set climbing back a few years, but you didn't do anything to it. You just wasted your own time and money and some climbers' time and money. It seems like that doesn't seem sustainable at all to me. Now that we've called into question the enforceability, there's another big factor, the safety implications of this, right? You read an old guidebook and you're like, oh, this has a bolt anchor at the top of this pitch. We can rappel if we need to. You get up there, the weather turns, and you're like, I guess we need to rappel down now. You get to the anchor, you push on a bit, you get to the anchor, there's no anchor there, so you can't rappel off, and you're stuck there. And then there's an expensive rescue or God forbid, body recovery operation up there. And then the NPS is in hot water because the family sues them for making the law, and because you would have survived had there been an anchor possibly. And there's this massive issue out there, and it seems like a whole headache too. Just because, there used to be bolts here. I thought there were still bolts here. I heard there were still bolts here, and they were chopped the weekend before I went. or the day before I went or whatnot. And then, assuming you do get rescued, that's the NPS and BLM that's having to pay for that, and taxpayers too. Let's not forget that that's how they get their money, is from us. And so you're wasting more of everyone's time and money. This doesn't seem sustainable or intelligent at all. And then additionally, because some anchors are going to be, apparently are going to be permit only now. And when you're looking at the whole permit system, how are they going to judge the safety and efficacy of an anchor? Because likely these are going to be non-climbing bureaucrats. Are they going to have to look up pictures of anchors online? That doesn't really work. I tried that. Before this video, I looked up unsafe anchors, and there really wasn't anything on it. Or unsafe climbing anchors, and there really wasn't anything on it. And then there's a sliding scale for what an unsafe anchor is. The sport mecca that is J-Tree is going to look an unsafe anchor is going to look very, very different than an unsafe anchor on Donner Peak and RMP. Those are going to be completely different scenarios, and it's going to have to really depend on it. The only way I see the permit process stuff working is if climbers are working directly with NPS, and as we know, legislators love to listen to their people, so I guess we'll see how that works out too. And if stuff is unsafe, it's just going to get replaced because people are going to be like, I'm not dealing with this anchor, I'm just going to replace it. And then they're going to get mad, and then they're going to prevent people from replacing an anchor, and then someone's going to die because the anchor wasn't replaced in time. Or they're just going to waste a bunch of money on replacing anchors that should have been replaced already. I'd also like to call into question why. Like, why would you ban bolting? I don't understand the point of this. You're going to get some small metal glinting on a rock that sometimes when I'm looking for it, I struggle to see. The average lay person who's walking around, who barely knows what rock climbing is, and just sees the people carrying big pads on their back that they think are yak saddles. It's not like they're going to know either. They're going to see, they're probably aren't even going to see the glinting on the rock, and if they do, they're just going to assume, oh, look, it's a diamond. I don't know. Maybe that's what people think bolts are. But when you see them, when you are a climber and you even struggle to see them yourself, I fail to understand how this provides any sort of impact. Or when there are holes in the rock, like these little holes. No one sees them. Those are even less visible than bolts. And additionally, there's a bunch, especially here in Colorado, when you get into the mixed climbing side of things, in the mixed climbing scene, there's tons of drilled holes in the wall for pick placements and such. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. But it does pop up a lot in places where mixed climbing is big, because there's a cool feature that's completely blank. No one can figure out how to do it, so they drill stuff into it. If it's there, I'll climb it. I don't like it. I wouldn't do it. But if it's there, I will climb it. And so no one notices this ever. This is another thing. Like, if the bolts get chopped, I mean, and they fill them with concrete or whatever, that seems like it'd be more unsightly to me than some weird holes in the rock. But that could just be me. I don't know. And maybe they're concerned about the carrying capacity of the climbing areas and too many people doing it. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. And I would assume that they'd be more concerned about trail decay and whatnot, but whatever, again, I guess. I guess they haven't thought about that yet. So these laws just aren't enforceable, they aren't safe, and they're not going to be efficacious in any way, or in any universe for that matter. But now, more likely than not, this will go through because legislators love listening to the people so much. But I do see a sort of a silver lining to this. Climbing has grown really, really quickly, and the community hasn't really kept up with the additional members. So a lot of climbing now has become more impersonal. I remember when I was a kid, I'd go to crags and you'd know 4 or 5 of the people there, and you'd all talk, you'd have a good time, you'd laugh, whatever. And now there just isn't the same community, and people are much less nice, to be honest, and they aren't interested in sharing routes. They like to hog routes a lot more. And a lot of those people are newer. So maybe, I guess there's the loose silver lining of maybe those people who are newer to climbing will move on to some other hobby like pickleball. But It's a shame. Climbing should really be for everyone, and I don't see this making climbing more for everyone. I see it making climbing for less people again. But again, that may or may not be a bad thing. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Please like the video if you like the video. This is a very annoying topic. I find it, as you might not have been able to tell, I'm pretty impassioned about it. And I really hope that you guys have a great week. God bless y'all. And thank you for watching this long. If you haven't liked the video, love you guys. I appreciate you guys supporting smaller creators like me. Thank you.